state your name and any question. Just push the button on the...
Sharon Cox, hi. First of all, I'd like to commend the council for a very informative afternoon with you. As a citizen here, I found the questions were good. Answers not always in agreement, what I want to hear, but I thought it was a good for us to hear as town people. To Councillor Roses and Councillor Gilroy, when you're looking, this goes to the dialysis and to the chemotherapy, when you talked about that AHS looked at the postal codes, please do not use that or talk to AHS about that. When I was with Queeknock Lakes, that's what they did. And at that time, we did have money for dialysis. People were donating to come to High Prairie. They told us that there wasn't sufficient people from the postal codes. But they took the people from Driftpile, Canuso, Whitefish, Gift Lake, those postal codes, and they put them all into Slave Lake at that time. So you can't use that. I think if they're going to look at numbers, and I think this council has a right to look at how did they come up with their methodology? Where did they pull it from? How long did they go back? I think really look at that kind of information. And I think to Councillor Gilroy, talking with the physicians, finding out how many have been referred, where have they gone, and could some of that have been done in high, because not all chemotherapy, as we know, can be administered in High Prairie as in Grand Prairie. There's some that has to be done in different places. But I think that's some of the questions that you need to have as a council to really look at. So I would encourage, the postal code issue is a huge issue. So you need a little more information than just that, okay? So thank you very much, and thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. And I think that she's right on that postal issue.
Sorry, I had one more thing. Personal. Please tell our premier, stay out of who's a journalist and who isn't. That was not a good thing, a trap, whatever to fall into. We should never be afraid of reporting anything, whether you're a reporter or not, whether we agree or disagree. That's what makes us a democracy, and we need to stand by that. So I think that's a fray that our government needs to stay completely out of. Welcome anybody.
Certainly we have taken a step back, and at this point basically have no rules as to who's a journalist or not. And we've brought in a very well-respected person within the journalist community to help us set up some policies and procedures around how we deal with the press going forward. So, and the press gallery has certainly supported us in that, and we're looking forward to the outcomes in that. So.
Trod carefully on that advice. Thank you.
Going back to the postal codes, yeah, I actually wonder if a person actually has to move from High Prairie and moves to Edmonton to take dialysis or basic chemotherapy or whatever, then their postal code changes and we lose that person who would have stayed here. So I can see why postal codes are misleading in some sense, because you don't really know the history of why this occurred. So.
No, I agree with Councillor Gilroy. Getting that information right from the doctors, the local doctors' offices, the patients that were diagnosed here and referred out would probably be at least an additional support to that number.
Just push the button, state your name.
I'll just wait until you're ready.
We're ready.
Oh, okay. My name is Jeff Berger, a taxpayer and High Prairie business person. A couple of items. I noticed that Sharon before me talked on the dialysis, but she never asked for our equipment back. We would actually, the old stuff can stay in Slave Lake. We would like the new improved. We don't really want our old stuff back, but that was our equipment that a lot of local people donated to. I don't have anything really to contribute about the chemotherapy, other than the fact that I spent time in the outpatient at the Cross Cancer with patients, and also at the QE2, and never in any of those cases have I ever seen a doctor doing the treatment. I mean, basically, it's here's the chemicals in a bag, and stick it in, and you sit around and you get a drip for half an hour, and sometimes you feel kind of sleepy. They don't recommend that you drive. They have somebody else drive you, and this becomes a real problem for people, particularly in the Back Lakes, who do not have the transportation, the transport, or even for senior citizens who don't have the transportation to, or the friends or the relatives, that can take time off to go and be with them, whether it's in Edmonton or Grand Prairie. They don't get treatment at all, is what happens. It's at least a $500 cost, I would say. The time that I've spent, taking people, to Grand Prairie has been, 6 to 8 hours. It's a day, really, and I don't think it's right. And it's based on the numbers, and again, this would be anecdotal, which I don't see this. Grand Prairie, at the times that I've been there was 8 to 10 people in the outpatient clinic getting chemo. And yet the Cross Cancer, was getting maybe 25 people. So the Cross Cancer should have had a huge number more, but maybe there's umpteen facilities right around Edmonton that are all doing chemo. But just based on what I saw in Grand Prairie, I would think, that we could run an 8-hour shift here with chemo, just based on numbers and how many people. So, but I don't really know what you're saying when we need skilled people here, keeping up your skills. I do know that if you want to get your finger reset, or from a broken or a cast made, or a tooth pull, you'd rather have it done by a person that does it 1,000 times a month than a person that only does it once every 2 years. You'd rather have that expertise, but I don't know the exact expertise that's involved in giving you chemotherapy. I mean, people come in, do the bag. It's a medication that's administered from the doctor. He tells you what you're going to do.
Right. It's just to be clear on that, it's not the administration, it's the preparation of the medication that's in that IV bag that actually is a very complicated process that needs to be done tremendously carefully. And that is the skill set that is the concern.
And then is it the shelf life, Danielle? Like, what's the concern? Can't that be prepared and then shipped to us?
No, the stability, they're not stable. They have to be basically prepared on site, which is the challenge. So you need to have somebody with the proper equipment on site to be able to have that skill to prepare, which can be a tremendously complicated process. And of course, not every chemo is the same medication, right? So there are a variety of different options in terms of that. So despite being a nurse, do not profess to be an expert in chemotherapy, and I'm somewhat reliant on HS to give me some information on that. But that's what I've been reassured.
So when I'm at the Cross Cancer, what's happening is that these nice nurses that are going around, but down in the basement, there's a bunch of Morlocks that are cooking up the stuff.
Yes. That is essentially a very interesting way of saying it, but yeah, that's basically what the story is, yeah.
Okay, well, I still think that we can do better for our citizens.
It goes off after that.
Being on the Heart River Housing when I was a town councillor, one of the things that Pat Billings always impressed upon us, and she was good at doing this when she was the CAO there. The province comes out with these wonderful social programs, and say, hey, we're going to build housing for seniors, we're going to build affordable housing, we're going to build, assisted living, we're going to do all of this kind of things. And as everybody knows, construction costs aren't very important. It's the operating costs that are really what kills you. But the province always said, we will look after you. But Pat always said, don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked into that, because what will happen is, for no reason at all, they'll come along and they'll yank your funding and you'll be scrambling. You'll be going back to the municipalities. So that's something that's actually happening. And it's, these things should be written in stone. As long as that building is there, this is the funding has to stay there for the, you can't download the costs. You just can't do it. A wise community, maybe we thought when I was on there that all of us were wise, would say, no, we're not going to get involved, because we know that it's not going to be, money's not going to be there forever. But other communities that weren't so wise, go ahead and build their 30 unit and their 60 unit and 80 unit buildings there, and then they just go to the politicians and cry that they're going broke. I don't like that policy, but it just seems to be a over and over thing of happening all the time. So anyway, if you are going to support these programs, these construction programs, the funding, the operating, whatever money, the lieu in taxes or whatever, should always be there, so you're not downloading down the road these costs to municipalities, because that just makes a mess of everything. Okay, that's it. Thanks. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. I certainly agree with you that it's way easier to commit to building a piece of infrastructure than it is to fund the ongoing operating costs, which is part of the challenge with everything that we're talking about in many ways. I mean, not everything is part of that, but that's why we need to work with Heart River Housing to come up with a sustainable model going forward that makes sense for everybody, because what we're doing doesn't make sense for any of us.
And just further to that, and I know the answer, but again, the question is, why don't we just guarantee MSI for a period of time? Why can't a community know from year to year how much money they have to work with?
Because the province doesn't know year to year how much money they have to work with. No, and having said that, I mean, if we'd been where we were at a year ago, which is, I mean, honestly, even then, oil prices were low, absolutely, I would be, saying it's completely untouchable. But, I mean, how do you say the loss of $5 billion in revenue over 5 months and not think that there might be some sequela to that? It's not. It's, if you look at, in comparisons to the past, and you account for inflation, this is the worst we've ever been off, ever, as a province. And which is, unfortunately, the situation that we're in an economy that's over-dependent on oil and gas and so susceptible to that. So I would love to be able to say we're moving towards diversifying the economy so we have stability, so we can say absolutely. So that's the vision that we get off the roller coaster for all of us, because you pay for that roller coaster as much as we do. And any conversation we have is recognizing fully the challenge to everyone, but there's only at some point that something's got to give, and for everyone, right? But I want to see that. That is my dream for all of us, that I could tell you one day that your MSI will be the same.
Having lived across Canada in large and small communities and seen some very generous people across Canada, a radical thought for you to pass on to our Premier that will cost her nothing. Is it possible to add a line to her next throne speech or to the budget speech that would encourage generous donors to consider places outside of the larger communities? If they want, for example, if we want a cancer place here, someone who has made a lot of money may want to name it after themselves. This coming from a person who's been in the arena with the Stronachs, who when Belinda Stronach wanted a cancer place, she paid for it. When she wanted a house for homeless, for abused women, she got her name on it, and places like that. So we don't need people giving, no offense to University of Alberta, but you know, $80 million to there. When some of our smaller communities, that could solve a lot. We don't want 80 million, we'll take 8, 10, but just to encourage people that to consider to think outside of the box and to think of the small communities that could really use the money they've made in some of these small communities, since we were part of oil and gas for so long. Just a thought.
A very good one too. Okay, any other questions from the gallery? No? And any other questions from the council? Well, then I would like to really thank you for coming. I know you gave us 2 hours and we didn't take it all, but it was difficult to get a meeting with you, but when you finally came, it was well worth meeting with you. So we appreciate the fact that you did give us the 2 hours, and what can I say? I hope you've gone away with some good suggestions and some background information to address the concerns that we have. So
The one thing I can say is that your rent isn't going up for the next year or the year after. We can plan that far ahead.
It's actually really funny because when I tried signed by the Legislative Assembly office, one of their lawyers actually called me and they're like, is it appropriate for you as the Minister of Municipal Affairs to be engaged in a rental agreement with a municipality? It's like, I'm distancing myself completely from the rent negotiation. So I can't have this conversation with you, Michael. You can talk to Don and Deb about it though.
okay, I guess the meeting is adjourned. You can mark it down, and thanks again.